Morning. The first item of business this morning is a debate on motion number 6216 in the name of Patrick Harvie on a living wage. Rob Gibson, followed by Joanne Lamont.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I believe that Patrick Harvie's motion is absolutely timely, but it is in two parts. The living wage is one part of it, but the last lines in his motion about the question of the gap between the richest and the poorest in the public and private sectors, fairer taxation and financial transactions have to be seen as part of this debate, because if we want to help our people who are suffering from poverty and low wages, then we have to have an economy that is actually gearing up to give them work. How do we get that? Well, partly we do from encouraging business, but also we'll make sure that we avoid that tax avoidance is taken into account. The public sector has to be competitive in the way that it attracts leaders to its ranks. And at the top, that is so. But at the bottom, it is also the case, because the public sector is where 9% of the people in the public sector are on lower pay. 29% of the people in the private sector earn under £7 an hour. So the public sector has set a lead here, and I think it's important for us to remember that the Scottish Government has attempted, through this solidarity approach, to get the emphasis onto taking people in lower pay out of the area of danger. In 2008, 454,000 people in Scotland were earning less than £7 an hour, and of these, 63% were women. And that's one of the major things which the Minister and others have raised that we have to see as a central part, Presiding Officer, of this argument about low pay and a living wage. 70% of people who work in hotels and restaurants are under £7 an hour. Again, a big part of the private sector. And 51% of people who work in retail and wholesale sector earn less than £7 an hour. Again, a large part of the private sector. How we deal with that is something which the Scottish Government would like to have the powers. But under the Calman Commission, there is no locus in that proposal for the private sector pay to be dealt with by the Scottish Government. I'm sorry, I don't have time. It is the case in other countries that with economies which had heavy industry, with economies which have had to modernise, that they too have found models to actually move forward and to reduce the gap between those who are at the top of the tree and those at the bottom. And that is done by fairer taxation and by progressive taxation. And I'd like to point out that if we are going to be able to have the money to support the development of the economy that allows people in the private sector to get better pay because it's expanding, then we have to tax such things as international financial dealings, transaction taxes, the Tobin tax, which the SNP has believed in and is looking to the G20 to find agreement on. We mustn't punish countries that have been financially prudent like Canada and Australia. We must make sure that we agree to have that tax money available to help with poverty, not just here, but in the developing world as well. Now, the failure of Greece to capture tax from avoiders and the rich is part of the source of their debt, apart from their speculation in CDOs. Point is that you've got to have a tax system that actually allows you to support in a meaningful way the people who need to get a living wage. And I would suggest that David Stewart gave us the example which points the way. Calgary has a booming economy. That's why it was possible for people to be attracted to that area. And I think we've got to have a kind of developing economy here in order to see the private sector starting to catch up with the public sector, Presiding Officer.